All right, this is the Town of Fairfield Flood and Erosion Control Board of February 21st. We are starting the meeting at 7:05, roughly. And at present, our Becky Bunnell, Chair, will go around.
Don Lamberti, Vice Chair.
I'm Dick Mahusky, I'm Secretary. Paul Andino, Member. And on the
phone is Peter Wiswell.
Peter Wiswell.
Oh, Peter Recording Secretary.
Member. All right, so we are officially calling the meeting to order. The first agenda item is to hear and consider and act upon the minutes of both December 13th, 2022 and January 17th, 2023. So let's start with December. Did anyone have any edits or additions or comments on the December meeting? Minute.
Looks good to me.
Yes, I have some comments. This is Dick. I have some comments.
All right.
And I also, I just want to comment that as I go back and listen to the recordings of these meetings, sometimes it's difficult to understand who's talking, so it would be helpful to anyone, to try and talk one at a time and also identify yourselves before you start talking.
That's good stuff.
So this is Dick. And the December 13th meetings, Prue, I can get together with you after or send you a copy of my markups or something so you'll have them. But basically, December has an asterisk after it in the heading, which shouldn't be there. And then the draft minutes, the word draft should be eliminated from that. And then as we go on to item number 6, which is the discussion on evolving plans for Penfield Pavilion, down toward the bottom of that first paragraph, 3 lines up from the bullet point section, 3 lines up, the word would. It reads, but if regulations are not met, it would no longer be available, talking about the discount for the CRS program. I would suggest changing the word would to might, because that's still not really the way FEMA's letter read is that if you don't clear the notice of violations, it could lead to removal of your CRS standing. So I would just say might is a little more wishy-washy. And then the next sentence, if the town is not part of FEMA floodplain, the town would no longer be eligible for FEMA grants. That, again, I don't think is a hard and fast decision yet.
So let's use, we're going to ask those questions of FEMA. That's actually an agenda item later in the minute.
Right, so I would just strike that sentence.
Okay, that's the last sentence?
In that paragraph. No, second to the last in that paragraph.
Or just add no longer be available.
Yeah, no, and then the sentence following that, I'm suggesting omit it.
Okay.
And then down in the last paragraph under item 6, 3/4 of the way down, the line is help period. They will be doing mitigation studies concurrent. I would suggest that the they be replaced with the town, because that's who we got the commitment to include $100,000 for flood mitigation studies in the main Penfield, what are we going to do about it capital project.
Okay.
The they is the town. And then just at the end, what I think is helpful is to, after Prue O'Brien, Recording Secretary, just add approved at the 2/21/23 FECB meeting.
Okay.
Those are my comments.
Are there any other comments on the minutes?
No.
From December.
Make a motion to accept the changes as Dick made.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. Let's move on to the January 17th minutes. Are there any comments on the January 17th meeting minutes?
Yes.
All right.
This is Dick. I have some comments. So in the heading, it should read January 17th, 2023 meeting, strike the word notice. And then the next big heading still says agenda. That should be replaced with minutes.
Oh, yeah, draft minutes. Okay.
And then down in item number 4, second full line from the bottom, it reads, would like to see flooding be mitigated to residents who live in I suggest that the word "to" should be changed to the word "for," so it reads that would like to see flooding be mitigated for residents who live in the area around Penfield.
Okay.
Dick?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yes,
this is Peter. Which paragraph are you at now?
Paragraph 4.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yep, I got it.
And then paragraph 5, continuing to the second bullet point, Rooster River Detention Area, the FECB ideas have not been taken into consideration. I'm unclear in my mind what that means, and I would suggest just deleting that line and inserting awaiting permits, because that's where that stands as I understand the sequence of events there. So strike the FECB ideas have not been taken into consideration and insert awaiting permits.
Okay.
The next bullet point down, high intensity wave damage study, University of Rhode Island. We FECB have had conversations with University of Rhode Island, but I would suggest eliminating that, because this is not like earmarked for University of Rhode Island. So it's not helpful to have that there. So I just strike. And then the last bullet point, Perry Green bulkhead, in the last line, engineering who will then send it to deep, it's send, should be SEND, send.
Okay.
And then just, again, at the very end, after recording secretary, just note that the minutes were approved at the 2/21/23 meeting of FECB. So those are my comments on that one.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah.
I was not in
Hey,
attendance.
Becky, this is Peter. January minutes. At item 6, it says on Fairfield Beaches, whereas the draft letter we're looking at says on Fairfield Public.
Peter, excuse me. This is
You're talking about the January minutes, point 6, Chairman Becky Bunnell would like to use the Fairfield Beach line. And I think, Peter, I think the question is, I mean, that was what may have been mentioned in the meeting. I wasn't there, so I think that was just a comment that was made. We're going to actually discuss that as our agenda item number 4 in today's meeting.
Okay, understood. So it's item 6 is Fairfield Beaches. The discussion tonight will be whether we, as suggested in the letter, make it Fairfield Public Beaches.
Correct. We will be discussing
Understood.
What options are even available. Right now, there's no plan to put it on any beaches, but that will be discussed and when we get to more.
Okay.
Are there any other comments on the January minutes?
No.
Can I have a motion to approve?
Okay, motion to approve?
A second?
Second.
Oh, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm deferring. I wasn't. The January minutes are approved.
Fair enough.
All right. Let us move on to agenda item number 3, which is a discussion on the evolving plans for Penfield Pavilion, as well as the town meeting that is happening this Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. First of all, are there any members of the public on the call today?
There do not appear to be.
Okay. So just for this group, then obviously everyone is aware of the meeting. I hope everyone will be able to attend, or if not, would be able to submit questions. I had prepared a document that I sent around late this afternoon. I don't know if you guys got a chance to read it or not, but I did want to get comments on that and would like to send that in on behalf of Flood and Erosion. So if we could, at this point, go to that letter. I'm trying to pull it up now. Does anyone need it to be read out?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I addressed it to Jennifer Leifert, Representative Leifert, because that is who had collected the draft minutes from before, and I copied Rep McCarthy Vahey, obviously us, the Flood and Erosion Control Board, Tom Bremer, because he's been taking the lead on this, John Marsilio, Brenda. And I did copy Diane Ifkovic, who is DEEP, and she's the FEMA representative for the National Flood Insurance Program. She's not necessarily the key FEMA person who will be answering the questions, but she is the person I've had contact with. So I thought it would be important that she was at least copied on this. So what the big questions I was asking are, what are FEMA's positions on the rebuild options that I know have been discussed by residents? And so obviously option one is the one that the town has put forward, which is to rebuild the pavilion as is, take away, reduce the height of the grade beams, reduce the height of the grade, $8 million cost. Other things I have heard from residents is another option, which is to only basically leave the part of the building that is compliant, that is on piles, and remove the part of the pavilion that is on the grade beams completely. Just remove the part of the building and remove the grade beams, and have the town have availability to have locker rooms and bathrooms available to be used on Penfield beaches. We don't have a cost for that, but I wanted to at least get FEMA's position on whether that would be acceptable and would that meet the violation. And then the option C is another thing I've heard from residents, which is basically option two, but to add a grade level deck, so it would be at the same level as the grade, so it would not be a raised deck, and it wouldn't hopefully, be in violation of, it would be free of obstacles, presumably, and it would meet the conditions of national flood. Potentially it could have a partially covered, just to have some shade for people, but it would serve the function that a lot of people seem to like the pavilion, that they can come and they can eat their dinners and their meals and still have bathrooms and locker rooms and everything available. So I'm really just more interested, would FEMA approve all of these before we get the town discussing any of these options? I want to just know, are these something that FEMA would approve? That was the first question. The second was a question that tied back to the November 28th, 2018 letter, where FEMA basically said that we were in non-compliance with the provisions of the National Flood Insurance Plan, and they, in that letter, referenced that it was likely not feasible to remove the grade beam, and that they would contact the town to discuss other remediation options, which means that there are potentially other options than removing the grade beam. That's what that letter implies to me. So I want to understand from FEMA, what were those other options, and were they discussed, and what happened to those? So that was question two.
Is that only related to remediation?
That was, and it was their letter. They basically said...
No, there are different methods. Air swap, for example. There are different methods to remediate.
Versus removing the grade beams.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
No, they said versus removing the grade beams.
Yeah.
In their letter, they basically said it is likely that you can't remove the grade beams, so I'm going to contact the town.
Okay.
FEMA said they would contact the town to discuss other options.
Okay.
So there was some discussion potentially, or
Okay.
should have been, and if they hadn't had that, we'd like to have that as a town.
I would only suggest on that item that in FEMA's letter of November 28th, I would characterize that, was that the second rejection, the first rejection, the initial notice of violation, because I think by that time it was the first rejection of the first appeal.
I think that was the second, let me confirm, I think that was the second appeal, and that, and that they had basically were saying...
I don't know, I'd have to look it up too.
I'd have to go look, I don't have it in front of me, I didn't bring that one, but I think that November 18th letter was, they were telling us that we're not going to get the money, and that we are in violation.
No, whatever it is, subject to looking
a good point.
Up,
I will say in which...
And the other thing, I would quote that letter, I would put the exact quote of that letter in there.
Close to the quote.
No, but I
use their language.
Put quotation marks on it for whatever it said.
Okay. So I'll basically, the comment then is to go back and just indicate which letter that was, what the intent of the letter was, and use their exact language and quote marks. Okay, and that was for question two. The next question is number 3, is a hypothesis that I don't know if it's real or not, but it's worth asking FEMA. Is it possible to exclude the pavilion from the town's National Flood Insurance Protection Program, so that we would carve it out of the program. It would not be eligible for any future funds, but the rest of the town would all be part of the National Flood Insurance Program. Is that a possibility? Have they ever done that anywhere else? And is that something that they would be willing to consider? Then number 4 is a request from FEMA to confirm if there is any deadline from FEMA's standpoint to make a final determination of the next steps and to submit a final remediation plan. Obviously, we're not aware of any plan, but I have heard rumors that there is a deadline of March of 2023, which is next month. If that's true, this question is, would it be possible to get an extension? Because frankly, this is something that's very controversial for the town, and we'd like a little extra time so that we can come to a final determination. And then 5 is a question I've heard from lots of residents. There's a lack of clarity of exactly what is at risk if we do not remediate at all. So right now, we, Flood and Erosion Control Board, understand that the town residents would not be part of the reduced CRS program that reduces the flood insurance premiums for our residents by 10%. So everyone who has flood insurance, their premiums will go up 10%. I just want to confirm that that is indeed true, which I believe it is. But I'd like to know if there are any additional implications, such as not being able for future disaster relief grant funding, and would any other grant funding be at risk. So I think it's important for the residents, and the town presumably may know this, but the residents certainly don't, to know what exactly are we talking about here. If we Those are all of them. And then what I did is I also pulled an attachment just in case it wasn't clear what we're talking about by saying keep half the building and lose half the building, because this is the structural plan from the bid package that I just pulled the page that deals with the piles versus the grade beams so that they could understand how much of the building would be saved.
Fair enough.
So those were the questions I had. First of all, are there any comments on these questions?
Excellent questions. Very good.
Yeah.
No, they're good. So this is going to Jennifer Leeper, who is the focal point.
She is our point.
Among our state delegation for this topic, right?
Right, and my understanding is she would send it to Jim Hines or send it directly send it to FEMA and or send it to Jim Hines.
And would she then read these questions to FEMA at the mountain?
Well, I don't know.
I'm unclear how this meeting is going to go. Are people just going to come to the microphone and say whatever is on their mind, and FEMA is going to say, okay, we'll take that under advisement?
I don't know.
Okay.
What I've heard, and this has not been confirmed, is that there is not going to be an open mic for residents, but they're going to be asked to submit questions on cards.
Okay.
I don't know if that's correct, so I can't speak to the final.
So will you have a copy of this ready?
I will have. I'm going to have cards with all these questions on them, and I will submit those cards.
Okay.
But what I'm hoping to do is get this in tomorrow morning, if this group agrees.
You got to be contentious or friendly?
I think there's still a lot of people that don't understand why FEMA is not allowing us to add fill, and why FEMA is making us tear down a structure that's completely, that's very safe, and why they're making us take the grade out when it's going to increase flooding. So I think as much as I think we've tried to explain FEMA's point of view to people, there's a lot of people who don't understand it and still have questions. So I think this is a great forum for people to ask those questions. They have to hear it from FEMA.
Hell hath no fury, the bureaucrat scorned.
I mean, they're willing to come down, which I think is great. I mean, obviously they're making a trip on, to come to our town, which is really nice, that they're willing to spend that kind of time. So, I mean, we owe them the courtesy of well-prepared questions, and hopefully they will give us the courtesy of good
question would be that clearly we have to remove some sand or whatever they want us to. Do they have any suggestions? How do we defend the 3,000 houses behind there? Do they have any helpful suggestions?
So I sent around the first set of questions we had, which were a combination of our questions and resident questions as well. Unfortunately, we asked a lot of those. We said, would FEMA be open to a elevated dune that had plantings on it? Would FEMA be open to something on the street side? So we asked those questions, and unfortunately all of their answers were additional information is needed to better conceptualize what is being proposed and asked.
That's a good thing.
So we will have to put specific plans in front of them to get that response.
But I think the neighborhood complains no matter what. I think, and it's probably a little disingenuous that, what do we do to build up the wall and save the neighborhood? Because that's not really the issue. The issue is very specific.
The Penfield Pavilion.
Yeah.
And I think we gotta be careful that, at least from our group standpoint, that we stay on task. And I would hope people in the town are gonna be all over the place.
Yeah, they're gonna be asking that question a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think, though, Paul, to your point, or to counter your point a little bit, is that we are the Flood and Erosion Control
Yeah.
Board, and I do think it is our responsibility to
Defend.
to look at what options there are to mitigate and add resilience to that neighborhood behind us.
I mean, if we're gonna spend $12 million, you just build a big berm and build a place across the street, but the neighbors are gonna be upset. The bottom line is we have no protection against. I mean, even though once this disappears, as it does, you've got all the water coming through at the beach club, and you've got all the water coming through on the residents on the other side.
Yeah.
It's kind of a futile effort.
Well, there's lots of, there's a lot.
Every journey starts with the first step.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've been trying to get people to sign on to since I've been on this board. And I just keep going back to the analogy that Rick Grauer told me when I was a young pup on this board. He said, it's like having a house that the floodwaters are coming and you have 18 windows open. So if you close 17 of the 18 windows, maybe with a couple buckets you can keep up with the one window that's flooding. But if all 18 are open, you can't handle it.
Well, but I think, I think the questions are good. I think it gives them their homework.
But I'd like to see if you can get some idea of what they're thinking in terms of how we defend ourselves. They'll say, I need more information, but where are they coming from? What are they thinking? I'd like to, they may not give it to us, but.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, because I think one of the things I'd like as an outcome at the end of this meeting, which is a follow-up meeting where we would sit down with DEEP and FEMA and have, I'd like to have some plans prepared. Maybe we even just use the ones that Race did, and maybe ask Race to do one or two additional ones. The town has agreed to fund a $100,000 study as part of this project for looking at mitigation options.
Yeah.
So I think we use that to do some preliminary part of that to do some preliminary drawings, and then very early on bring in FEMA and DEEP and just say, here are 7 options.
If they could point us in the right direction.
Which ones are you open to? Which ones not? What works? What doesn't? If this sort of works but not quite, what is it that doesn't work? Let us go back and
the other thing that I don't understand is who's on first, who's on second. Are we, let's assume we're talking about a flood wall at the southern side of Fairfield Beach Road from the Durrell Pavilion high ground to Rickards Beach high ground.
The street side, basically.
Where the sidewalk is today.
Yeah.
Move the sidewalk to the other side of the street where the sidewalk is. So is that structure any business of FEMA at all? Or is that just, we would be dealing with DEEP to get the permit for that? No. Totally in AE,
It's AE 13?
12.
AE 13?
11.
11?
I think it's AE 11 there.
Really? The parking lot side?
Yeah.
I would have thought it's AE 13 at least.
I don't know.
So I don't know.
But that's
my understanding is if you're in a coastal zone, you need to get Army Corps, DEEP, and FEMA all aligned. But I could be wrong. I think that's a really good question. We should probably get the answer to that. I'm not sure we asked FEMA that, but I think we need to research that and make sure we understand who.
It'd be nice to know where they're coming from, what they're thinking.
Yeah. Because I do think that there are.
Becky?
Yeah, Peter.
Becky, this is Peter. Just a couple of points for consideration. Relative to the option of taking down the portion of the pavilion that's non-compliant, can the town rebuild that portion but compliant, leaving the rest of the building intact?
Well, that's what they're proposing with option 1. They're basically saying the way we are going to make that non-compliant part compliant is we're going to take away the offending grade beam, which is non-compliant, and put a grade beam in at a reduced height level, lower level, such that it becomes compliant. So they're actually proposing exactly that, Peter. That's exactly what that's option 1.
I understand. I just didn't, when I read it, I didn't pick up on that immediately. The other point opting out of the ability to present a claim in the future, is there any chance that there would be a knock-on effect from that that would preclude claims by the homeowners behind the pavilion?
The specific question we're asking is whether we can carve out just the pavilion and leave the rest of the town's National Flood Insurance Program intact. That's the very specific question we're trying to ask FEMA. If they're saying by not addressing the pavilion, the town loses it, then that means that. Well, actually, that's a good question. I assume we can still make claims. We just have flood insurance that costs 10% more.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think it's two-part. It's number one, can you make a claim? And number two, is it subject to the 10%? But I think the specific question is there a consequential impact from opting out on the pavilion? I think the way you have phrased it, it speaks for itself, but if this became a great big issue with a great big storm, it might be one of those little points that somebody fusses over. And if it is just minutia, disregard that I even mentioned it. But I'm just concerned that somebody in FEMA will say, "Oh, of course, you opted out for the pavilion," but if you read the fine print of the regs, you'll see that consequentials are automatically taken out as well.
I don't think.
Unlikely.
This is Dick. I don't think FEMA is saying we will prevent your residents from taking out flood insurance under the National Flood Insurance Protection Program. I think what they're saying is FEMA will invite or disinvite people to be members of the community rating system, which is the vehicle that gets you a discount on your premium in the insurance. I don't think they're saying we're going to keep you from getting insurance.
And but we should confirm, that is actually worth confirming.
Yeah, and then if there is a disaster area proclaimed after a big storm, then we would be able to make a claim on our flood insurance policy.
Well, is it worth just simply asking for clarification?
Oh yeah. No, I'm wasting our time by giving my opinion.
No, I think that's a good clarification. I will add that in just to confirm that, assuming that we do not remediate, is our residents still eligible for National Flood Insurance Program and eligible to make claims, just not eligible to take advantage of the community rating system, which allows us to get a 10% discount. That is absolutely worth confirming.
Good question.
In other words, would FEMA refuse to insure anybody and we'd have to go in the open market, or would FEMA still insure town residents?
And even if they are insured, are they any way impacted by the town opting out for the pavilion, which might give rise to a lawsuit by the homeowners against the town because the town opted out? It's splitting hairs, but if you feel it's appropriate.
I'll see if I can clarify that question and make sure that I'm capturing your point. Thank you for that.
Yeah. That was all I had.
All right. Are there any other FEMA-related questions that we would want to put in front of FEMA?
Just to clarify, this is from a race drawing. This shows the line between the VE13 and AE11 zone. So right over here, there's like a 4-foot section that's actually in the VE zone, the way race drew it.
Oh, God.
But basically, if if you put a wall on the sidewalk, it's in the AE11 zone.
AE11, okay.
Sure.
And this was done,
That was,
didn't they change the firm maps? So this was done in 2015?
that was done after the firm, yeah.
It was changed after that?
Firm maps were changed in July 2013.
Okay, all right, so this was done after the firm map. Okay, good. All right, so there are some questions that I would personally want to ask the town, but they're not FEMA questions. So I'm thinking of doing a second letter to Brenda and the town and ask that she address those. And I did not get a chance to write it yet, but if we could agree that I can.
I agree with that strategy. Let's just focus on the FEMA notice of violation and how we can clear it.
Right, but I would like to have some town questions
for the meeting,
answered.
for Thursday's meeting, we should focus on that.
No, I think it should be two separate letters as well.
Yes, exactly.
But I do think there should be some questions asked of the town in Thursday's meeting. Because, so for example, I still am unclear why the consultants who designed the building and gave us these plans that obviously did not conform to the VE zone that is where we built are not, we can't go after their insurance companies for, I don't know, malpractice is maybe too strong a word, but.
E&O, have E&O insurance.
Yeah.
I don't understand when we can't.
I mean, we did.
So we need to ask that question until a rational response is received.
Well, Fairfield Beach residents did ask that question, and the town responded, and it was in her newsletter. Her response was that the lawyers from the town did look at it, and they said that the consultants and engineers were not liable. I would like to understand why.
Yeah, why? I mean,
because it doesn't make sense.
I'll take the next contract if that's the case. How does a designer do a project without being liable? As a matter of fact, before you take a project for a municipality, you have to prove your insurance, your E&O insurance. You have to prove you're covered.
Yeah.
Just so that we can, I don't get that. I agree with that.
As a devil's advocate, do they assume that they'll get approval of FEMA before it's built? There might be the understanding of.
I mean, we go to them because they should know the FEMA requirements.
Well, they're the experts. We're not.
But you never got approval, so they. Well,
and I keep going back to Whit O'Brien.
Yeah,
we're Whit O'Brien. We're the smartest kid on the block. We have our ex-FEMA employees here who know FEMA inside and out.
Apparently
they were at the table.
Yeah, I don't know what.
They were at the table to say, hey, Mr. Engineer, you might be able to calculate stresses, but you don't know nothing about these regulations. You can't do that.
And they're complicated. And FEMA has every right to tell us, look, present to us what you want to do, and we'll comment. But we're not going to tell you the definition of our own code. I mean, whenever I go to City Hall, they don't say, we'll tell you if it works or not. You got to present your plan. So we may only have the option of giving them one at a time.
Yeah.
And then seeing them get their comments. Giving them 7 is probably the bottom for 3 years.
Okay. Maybe we'll narrow it down to the 2 we like and say this or this.
We're going to do this or that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So the other town question I had besides the insurance was, I'd like the town to at least do internal costing of the options that we're asking FEMA. Because I'd like to know, if taking down half the building and removing the grade beam is $6 million, then maybe we just spend the $8 million and keep it and remove it, But if it's $2 million, I'd rather take that $6 million and put it against something else in the town. So
all the numbers seem high to me. Like I said, I've done a lot of remediation and all of them seem high. Now there could be engineers' numbers. They're always, and you don't know. I mean, maybe it's $7 million. Every million counts, but.
I would only comment that on the projects that I've been aware of in this town where we started out with engineers' numbers, when you get out on the street, it's, oh my God, dramatic increase.
I'm saying there's a potential for the opposite, but who knows? I mean, there are numbers that we might want to look for some sort of definition as a question. Okay, we're going to spend $8 million. Who's done the cost study? Let's see your report.
Well, I think that $8 million was an internal cost. They hired it was in one of Brenda's notes, and I'm not using the right language. It was something about we hired a cost consultant to put these numbers in place.
It would be interesting to see that report.
But I'd also like to, before we just charge ahead with this, I'd like to see a what's it cost? When you try to get better costs.
Bid process.
Value engineering.
Value engineering. Yes, thank you. Yes. Because what if putting piles in versus pouring cement is cheaper? what if reinforcing the piles that are there is a cheaper way to do it than to pour cement?
They're spending way too much money.
I don't know. I mean, I assume that the person with these bid packages together, or these preliminary costs together, is good at their job.
They may have one strategy, maybe to your point, is a better one.
Yeah, so it'd be worth doing some value engineering,
sure.
I think, too. Yeah. So costing the 3 options plus has value engineering been done. Is there any other things we would want to ask the town?
I think that the residents are going to ask every question 6 ways of the town, so
we don't need to do that.
Let's just see what plays out, would be my.
Okay, all right. So is there anything else then that we would want to talk about regarding Penfield? First of all, let me go back to the letter that I had drafted. With the addition of, Dick's addition of putting there in point number 2, indicating what the intent of the letter was for November 2018, and putting their actual quotes in quote marks, and Peter's comment to get a little bit more clarity on are residents still eligible for a national flood insurance program, just not part of the CRS, or do they have to go into the open market? Assuming you make those 2 edits, are you comfortable, or is everyone comfortable?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the letter as amended, and Becky do those changes and get it off to Jennifer Leeper. Toot sweet.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
and are all in favor of doing a separate town questionnaire?
Yes.
That will only have 2 items on it, because we're not going to go into all the stuff that the residents want. They can ask their own questions, but the insurance for contractors and the costing of the options.
Sounds good.
Yeah, yes, I think I would have enough confidence in our chairwoman's ability to write a intelligent letter to say, just go ahead and put those 2 items in a letter to the town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Separate letter.
Second.
That would be my motion.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so
Aye.
that is all I had for the Penfield Pavilion. Are there any other questions or comments on Penfield?
It's a mess.
All right, let's move on to the letter that Dick drafted on the Harbor Commission dredging and sand usage.
Mm-hmm.
So the Harbor Commission, I've been doing a little bit of, what's this Harbor Commission all about? And they have a whole section in the state statutes that talk about what they do and what they don't do. The state statutes limit the fees that they can charge for the moorings that they control in Southport Harbor. I believe it's $200. I think I looked at the latest version of the statute.
That's all?
$200, and that was my reaction. And my God, for $200, you get to park your boat out there. They have a
Well, it's only a 14-foot boat.
No. The big sailboats are out there anchored. They
anchor. I was reading something.
They anchor big sailboats. The Pequot Yacht Club provides ferry service in and out of the boats. I'm unclear whether the majority or all of the boats that are anchored out there, they are members of the Pequot Yacht Club in their own right. Perhaps they are. I don't know that. But I commented to Bill Perugini. It seems that the moorings are like having a ticket to the Masters down in Augusta. Like you put it in your will, so your great-grandchild now has the ticket that you had 60 years ago. But the $200 per mooring slayed me. And also, so they have their own fund, and they use that money to improve the harbor, hire consultants, whatever. But they're also a line item in the town budget, where in this current proposed budget that Brenda presented to the Board of Selectmen this morning, I believe, they have $20,000 for consultants and work and stuff.
But did you see the page after that? Because they've got their special projects fund for $1.6 million listed in that same budget.
Oh, I didn't see that.
It was the page right after the $20,000. If I read that.
I don't know. I don't think that's I think that's a new topic.
Oh, was it?
I think that's a new topic.
I thought that was the Harbor
I don't think. I'm not.
Special.
Yes, I did see that page. My thought was that's not them. That's something else.
Oh, okay.
so they're doing this dredging thing. If you've gone back, I think I sent out the link to their meeting, how they got the Army Corps all primed to do this and so forth. Some of the dredging that they're going to do is inaccessible to the equipment that the Army Corps is going to use, which puts it in a clamshell boat that they take over the oysters and dump it or something. And they're going to be using an excavator to remove some of that sand. So that's why in this letter, I suggest, geez, if you're going to use an excavator anyway, why not dump it in a town truck? And the town can do exactly what they did a few years ago, where they put a sorting machine over on Sasko Hill, sort the sand, take the proper size sand, and put it over on our beaches that may be necessary. So, but the purpose of this letter is to kind of acknowledge that, we don't want to rain on your parade necessarily, but gee, maybe we can have some conversations between us and engineering about using the sand for our engineered beaches program, which has gone nowhere for 4 years now. It's been on the project list.
We've asked for clarification whether they've actually done any engineering to our beaches yet. I know that 4 of the beaches, engineered beaches, are approved by Deep.
Right, and I sent Bill Hurley a follow-up email just the other day asking for specifics on that, because we need. I mean, why not? Get our front-end loaders and our excavators and a couple town trucks and start doing this work each winter. We should be doing this. So,
I like your idea, and if the engineered beaches don't need the sand, I would like to make it available for purchase or
stockpile it for after the next storm.
Purchased by town residents. But the last thing I want to do is give it away or dump it out in the ocean. Why would we dump perfectly good sand?
Right. And maybe it's not all perfectly good sand, because I forget where, but as I was reading through this stuff, one of the reports on the dredging or something, it said that, the Army Corps hasn't been able to do the dredging yet because suitable cover has not been identified for the disposal area. And I'm just reading between the lines saying maybe the muck out in the middle of the channel isn't really what we want to put on our town beaches anyway. The shoaling that's right on the eastern side of the entrance there, that shoaling, just looking at the aerial photographs, that's nice and tan. That looks like good sand. And that would be the stuff that the excavator would have to be getting, because
they can't suck that up with a pipe.
The sucker dredger or whatever they're going to use is out in the channel. It can't come into 3 foot of water. So this is my draft of what to send them, just to put the topic on the table and see what happens.
When is their next meeting? Because I think one of us.
Their next meeting was 4:00 today.
Oh, so we didn't attend.
In this room, in this very room.
Yeah. Okay, so once you send this, when their next meeting, they meet once a month?
I think so, yeah.
I think one of us should attend and ask the questions in person.
Sure, I think that's a good idea.
They're unlikely to.
It occurred to me that they take the sand here and then they throw it out there. On the one hand, it gets rid of it because it's cheap to get rid of. Then the other one, they have to go buy some sand to do it. Has anyone done the cost benefit to see which is cheaper?
But I think my sense
here at the cost to the town.
My sense from what I've listened to so far, the driving thing is that, oh man, we got the Army Corps to agree to do this. Yeah. The Army Corps is not going to charge the town anything for this. The Army Corps is going to do this all on their nickel.
Right.
They're saying let's not look this gift horse in the mouth by trying to complicate the issue. So,
but then we have to go buy somewhere else.
Yes, Peter.
And may I ask Dick a couple of questions? First, Dick, when I read your letter, I wasn't entirely clear as to whether putting the sand in the first instance on Sasko Beach was already part of the Corps plan. Is that part of the Corps plan?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the detail of the Corps plan other than they were planning to put the material in their clamshell barge and dump it offshore. My sense is that although they need to use an excavator, the excavator would have enough reach to go and dump its sand out into that same clamshell device. But I don't know.
And the reason I ask is simply because I've been involved in a lot of actual dredging projects around the country, and it is you're moving a lot of product for a small amount per ton per yard, whatever the measurement, and that operation of dropping it at Sasko Beach is going to very substantially raise the cost. And so we need to be prepared for somebody saying, hey, wait a second, that's a big increase in cost. Who's going to pay it? And I'd be surprised if they don't raise that, but maybe not. But mindful of the way dredging operations usually work, we should be ready for that. But I may be all wrong. Certainly when I was growing up in Southport Harbor had a reputation for being horribly polluted. And a big reason was the old Exide plant that, as we all know, was a Superfund site or something similar and completely remediated. But it deposited a lot of heavy metals in Southport Harbor, especially up around the tide mill. We should be ready for that being put out as a consideration. They may say that Southport Harbor is completely remediated, but it wouldn't surprise me if somebody said, oh, gee, no, it's still badly contaminated. My knowledge is pretty old, but that could be something that comes up.
Well, I bolded the word suitable because obviously I don't think we should put muck on the beaches. And then the first bullet point is town resources could be used. So I'm not looking for the Corps to do anything other than take the excavator buckets and drop them into a town truck on that section of beach, as opposed to putting them in the clamshell barge. I mean, that's my vision.
Oh, Dick, I think your idea is wonderful because if they are going to be bringing the product to a approved dumping ground, and there aren't that many in Long Island Sound, I think when Don referenced the cover, what they often do is they dump the spoils, and then to satisfy some sort of regulation, they put something on top of it if there's any suspicion at all of a contaminant. And if we could say to the Corps, don't worry about taking it way off by middle ground, just dump it at Sasko Beach, that would probably be a big cost saver for them if the town would then agree to bring in trucks and their own equipment to haul it away. So I think it's a great idea, subject to those small caveats.
Yeah, but right now, I believe their plan is to take the dredge spoils and dump them on top of our oyster beds, clamshell, clam beds, whatever.
Which I certainly wouldn't want if it's contaminated.
Right, exactly. And then the other thought, just thinking it through, maybe the fact that they were unable to find suitable cover, now they've determined that the tan sand close to the side of the channel is appropriate for cover. So you dig the muck out first, go dump it out on middle ground, and then come back for the good sand and then dump that on top of the muck. I don't know. Well, like I said, I don't know what their plan detail
all
is.
All excellent points, and it just it'll be interesting to see what they come back with, because I think your suggestion is a great one, and we just have to see what they come back with.
Yeah.
All right, so are there any other comments on the letter that Dick drafted for the Harbor Management Commission?
Okay, then I make a motion that I send this letter as written off to the Kim Taylor, the chairman, and her commission, and the Shellfish Commission because they're involved in this, Tim Bishop because he's conservation, and Marsilio and Hurley because they would be DPW doing any onshore work that might be prudent.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moved. All right, we're gonna move on to item number 5, which is, status of items on the Flood and Erosion Control Board project list.
Okay, I think I still have not recast that to my satisfaction. As I was going through it, my overarching thought is, God, there's a lot of stuff going on, but nothing's happening.
Yes.
And I think we've been in that mode, maybe not admitting it to ourselves for like 3 years now. We have all this good stuff, and it's like, look at the tide gates. I mean, the tide gates are finally on the approved capital list for the next fiscal year. Where are the tide gates? Where are the plans for the tide gates? Have the engineers been? It's just sucking wind. And the railroad bridge tide gates, we finally got the last hurdle covered because the State Historical Society has said, yeah, okay, you can take part of the bridge truss and put it over here on stanchions. And it's like, okay, so why aren't we doing anything?
So, and I'm sure we're doing.
I don't know how to get.
Well, so I'm wondering, do we talk to Brenda about getting a system by which we can send? I mean, it would seem to me we should send information to someone for an update that has some high-level approval. So we have 12 projects. We want to see action on 3. We come out of a meeting. We submit those 3 for an update for our next meeting, so that we're almost forcing, but Brenda should be involved in this, or someone that someone at a high order, so that we keep stuff moving. So we've got to establish a mechanical process.
Well, one of the
and
things,
I'm sure we're doing it.
One of the things that we have done, Becky, 2 months ago, Becky wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen saying, hey, let's establish a resiliency account. And we heard back from Nancy Lefkowitz, hey, that's a great idea. We'd love to hear you at one of our meetings, but crickets from everybody else.
I followed up with her saying, can you get me on the an upcoming agenda, because I'd like to present it.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing.
We need like a
that would be.
Well, right now we meet with Bill Hurley. We try to meet with Bill Hurley. Like we met on February 2nd, so I was going to update people on what he told us on these projects. But to your point, Bill is got a lot of new people on his staff, and so he is working as hard as he can to get these projects up and going. But
hard as he can and harder than he should.
He's there, but there's a lot of new people, and we lost Laura, who could crank stuff out. Now you've got new people who it takes them a lot longer to get these. And my understanding is purchasing is also taking
they're going through changes also.
They're all completely staffed, so now, with the...
And they have a brand new director now, because Gerald retired.
Yeah, so that's going to even be more.
Yeah.
So there has been a delay in a lot of our projects. There are some good things, like ARPA funding has a deadline we have to spend by a certain amount. So those projects that have those kinds of deadlines are getting progressed. And we were able to get a grant, anything that Circa's working on, it seems. But other projects, it seems like it's a really long time to do the project. Mm-hmm. Like, I was shocked at how long we gave GZA. We gave them a full year to do a cost-benefit analysis on 3 sites. A full year? I mean, I've never done...
backlog.
I've never done a cost-benefit analysis, but I can imagine...
You could probably do it in a year.
You need a full year.
You don't need a year.
I mean, and they're a big firm. I mean, we basically offloaded that to them to be able to...
So we need to have some sort of formalization of when we have that level of frustration, who do we go to? Who can we roll? And maybe it has to be done through Brenda. It's a fairly new administration. She's changing a lot of people in-house. I don't know. I just think that unless we have a direct conduit, and Bill's overwhelmed. So I'm not just saying let's all run to Bill.
No, I consciously try to avoid that. I don't want to add to.
Because then he'll quit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think
but he'll retire. He's got.
But
I don't know what their formula is, but Bill Hurley has a lot of years in with this town.
Yeah.
Does he really?
Yeah. So
he'll hit the magic number.
So for the balance of item 5, Becky,
I'll just read off what we got in the February 2nd meeting. So the Perry Green project, which is an ARPA fund, the COP has been submitted. Unfortunately, the plan was rejected because the way they had drawn the wall, they were trying to make it more of a continuous wall, but there was more than 18 inches in certain sections. Certain sections the wall came out closer, but because there was 18 inches, we're going to have to go back and probably add some jogs in to make it a little less. So it doesn't sound like it's a huge issue, but it is unfortunately something
it's just another time
to redesign
another month and a half,
and resubmit. Rooster River is also in permitting right now. It's been submitted to Army Corps, and DEEP came back with a small issue, and I can't remember which site it was. There were some wetlands that we need to have alternate wetland. We're taking some wetlands, we have to get some wetlands somewhere else. So again, not a big issue, but we do have to come back and address that issue. They are doing a cleanup of the water course, and we're coordinating that with Bridgeport. This is in the Rooster River. We have, I think, 6 easements around the Linwood area. So we're trying to go and just take the things that keep the flow of water, the big branches and trees and stuff down, to get that to. Then the circuit grants that I mentioned, the benefit cost analysis, we had asked for 3 areas. One is sort of the Sasco Hill area to the old dump where but basically, if we added a berm there, would that cost benefit make sense to the town? The other is on the other side of town, the Ash Creek berm, that would be the Ash Creek open space down to South Benson Marina section. They're doing cross benefit analysis. And then the last one was, what was the third one? I think that was the
Fairfield Beach?
Might have been the Fairfield Beach area. The Riverside open space apparently is not looking good because the way they do a cost benefit analysis, they have to do it per, I guess, the FEMA standards, but it's a more rigorous approach than Army Corps was. So if we can't get a positive cost benefit, it just means that we're not going to get grants. So we funded from bonding. Obviously makes it much attractive to the town. The Riverside Tide Gates and Culvert project and siphon area, we put that in at 7.1 with contingency, but that seems to be also contingent on getting a grant that we are trying to find a grant for. We'd looked at getting a grant for the roadway part of it, but we weren't bad enough to get a grant. There were other bridges and roadways that were in worse shape that they were going to give the grant money to, so we're still looking for a grant for that. The Fairfield Beach Club, we have $100,000 that was approved last year in the plan to do a study. Right now that project is on hold because they don't want to give that to race until we've had a conversation with the beach club itself to see if they'd even be open to exploring options to mitigate flooding for the neighborhood behind them. So
they're not going to do anything. Yeah.
I mean, they don't have to pay. It's just would they?
Right. No.
But if we basically put a wall on the,
right,
are they going to object?
Yeah, which they will. But it's worth asking.
But we have to have that conversation. So that Eli was going to set that conversation up. I need to follow up with him to see if he has approached them. And
I also sent him an email with some notes and stuff from years ago when Rick Brower and I met with their president or whoever it was.
Which actually they said they were open to it.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah.
That's when he did the whole wall plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that started out with them when we did the master plan, and what was it, January 2015, somebody there read the master plan and in the master plan, we originally said, Beach Club doesn't seem very interested in their neighbors beyond, and they took umbrance at that, and we actually issued an addendum to the master plan saying, well, we made that comment without knowing the facts, and we apologize to you. So
we'll remind them that they are open to looking at it.
Remind them, and that was my point of sending that to Eli, because he doesn't have any of that history.
That history, exactly.
Okay, so, hey, you were our buddies once, why don't you?
Re-up.
Yeah.
So the race was also assigned another project, which is to look at that Ash Creek open space, the marina up to the Ash Creek open space. But that is also on hold now because they are waiting for the GZA benefit cost analysis. Yeah. So these benefit cost analysis that are taking a full year are holding up a lot of our projects. Because, I mean, all it means is that we are unlikely to get a grant if we don't get it. So we would have to bond it, which makes it obviously less attractive. Penfield, we already talked about. The high-intensity wave study, apparently, there is an RFP being prepared. It was supposed to be available at the end of February or early March. We would obviously coordinate the work with Circa, Deep, Army Corps. They'd look at models plus design. I emailed Mega and said I would like to actually have a chance with Flood and Erosion to review that before it goes to purchasing, because I think what happens a lot is these RFPs go out, they get sent to purchasing, and we look at it after the fact and go, ooh, that's not what we had at all talked about. What is that? Yeah. We should, as Flood and Erosion, I think, as a matter of principle, see every RFP before it goes to purchasing.
Yeah.
I had some questions. They were supposed to investigate up to a 20-inch sea level rise, which drives me crazy, and I don't think it's even rational. I think if you save
Don, your objection is noted for posterity.
Yeah, I know.
We understand.
Yeah, but look, you're wasting money.
Well,
I'm in Don's camp.
You're wasting money.
8 inches is probably a fair number.
How long do you want this to last? I'm assuming that anything we do has to have a 50 to 75 year life.
Yeah.
So you think only 8 inches in 75 years?
Yeah, 50 years.
I looked at. I looked at.
No, I don't want to see another one of your charts.
Okay.
I agree.
I like charts.
I agree. It's a straight line.
Totally absurd.
The last 10 years,
11
has been a straight line.
Yeah.
11 inches.
But
that assumes the assumptions there. This may not.
If you're gonna,
overly negative.
If you're gonna play in their ballpark, you gotta play with their ground rules.
They're gonna read.
Circa's saying the 20 inches, and that's the ground rule that we have. Let's wait for the decadal review and see what happens.
Circa's gonna redo every 10 years, so this was what, 4 years ago that they did that?
Yeah, it gotta be another 5, 6 years, and we'll have their decadal review.
But not even NOAA buys 20 inches. No, NOAA doesn't even.
Right.
All I can say is that's the state of Connecticut's approved amount.
And we've got the least amount of shore protection of any state our circumference.
What, our count?
Yeah, I mean, our state. Our state makes a proclamation and then makes it so difficult to protect the ground.
Yeah, because their premise is...
Take it all down.
Oh, there's another word now. There's a new word for managed retreat. It's not managed retreat anymore. It's
really?
Proactive resettlement.
Yeah, proactive.
That's the new language.
There's 1,000 homes. Where are you going to put them?
It's called surrender.
Proactive resettlement.
Who's going to pay for that?
Proactive.
All you got to do is say, give me the check. I'll leave tomorrow. But, no, I think it's, I still also say that the world has got to use ocean water. It's a ridiculous statement, but desalinization, when you consider that our deserts are actually creeping up as much as the water, that we're gonna need water way beyond fresh water, way beyond.
We're gonna have to, but I actually was reading some pretty disturbing articles about how desalinization. Obviously it takes the salt out, but then you have to put it back. They right now they put it back in the ocean, so we're just
so they're making the water more salty. But, you've got to come up with solutions for it. But Santa Barbara takes like 20 million gallons.
They do a lot.
Yeah. We don't have any fresh water. But anyways,
someone take a huge iceberg from Antarctica, pull it up to Saudi Arabia.
There you go.
Take a couple of years to melt.
There you go.
All right, so downtown green infrastructure, which was another ARPA project. They've reviewed 3 alternatives. They're all very expensive, so they're looking at carving that back and seeing what they can afford with ARPA funds. The tide gates, they're doing an updated study. So Tim Bishop is reviewing. I know we've done sort of a preliminary study back in 2016 of all the tide gates, but he felt like it wasn't robust enough.
They hired somebody to do that?
Yeah, it's in purchase. I think it's actually being done. I'd have to go back and look at the RFP and see who they hired. I'm sorry. The RFP is in February, I think. It's sitting in purchasing right now, and it's supposed to go out in February, so it may actually have already been posted. Then the railroad underpasses, which is a project that Circa is doing, got moved to March 2nd, I believe.
Yes, March 2nd. We don't know the time. It was originally scheduled for Thursday, February 23rd. Now it's Thursday, March 2nd, a week from this Thursday. Don't know where, don't know the time. We will advise.
as soon as we hear.
we will advise.
And then we didn't talk about, the Fairfield Beach Road. We were looking at doing elevations to see what we could do. That is so far down the list.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
know.
even bother talking about that anymore.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's the update that I
Okay,
have
thank
on the key projects.
The only other thing I have two other things just to mention as informational. So the Mill River Wetland Committee, and I apologize for who are they? I have their name here somewhere, no I don't. Mill River Conservancy, I guess it is. So their new president, John Dilley, he had a coffee meeting the other day. Becky was out of town carousing somewhere down south. And I went in her stead. And it was just an informal conversation among various people. Tim Macklin from the Shellfish Commission was there, and Tom Dillon and a couple other folks. And Tom Dillon wants to just get a group of people who are interested in waterway things. And although they're the Mill River Conservancy, they have interest in the Ash Creek Estuary. They have interest in the Rooster River. So it's another contact. And I mean, the Mill River, it's a tidal river in itself. So we will get invited to other things from them, and they could be a resource for us. And then the only last thing, there was also the Engineer Building Council, whatever it is, EPC. So they had a webinar the other day, and my CRS is letting me down again. Brian Thompson, thank you. So Brian Thompson was one of the presenters, and I didn't come away with any new insights or anything from that. So
Okay.
he talked about the Flood Management Act and how everything's wonderful. He didn't talk about, what is it, planned resettlement? What was
Proactive
Correct, relocation.
relocation or proactive.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if everyone's adopted that, but those are,
That's the current term.
like, climate change is now climate disruption.
Right. That I heard.
And who's the promulgator of this? Within Connecticut or just nationwide?
This is just,
Groups.
I just read it in an article. These are the new terms
Oh,
that
okay.
people are using. Because
Okay.
first of all, everyone started using global warming. Well, it's not warming, it's getting cold, it's getting fires.
That went to climate change.
Then it was climate change, now it's climate disruption, because it's not just, it's actually disrupting when you have fires.
That's right.
All right, so
I
is there
have
any
nothing.
other additional business that, the board needs to discuss?
I think we're good.
Anyone? Hearing none, I call this meeting adjourned at 8:14, let's go.